Welcome to the Ducks Unlimited podcast, the only podcast about all things waterfowl. From hunting insights to science-based discussions about ducks, geese, and issues affecting waterfowl and wetlands conservation in North America, we bring the resource to you. The DU Podcast with your host, Chris Jennings.
Joining us today for another awesome show is Addison Edmonds, the founder of Gunner Kennels. Addison, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
You know, it's great to have you on here. I mean, obviously, you guys are a big sponsor of the podcast right now, really helping us out. And we wanted to get you on here to not only tell the Gunner story, but also talk about Gunner products. What's coming up next for Gunner? What are you guys doing in June? But before we get started doing that, I really wanted you to introduce yourself to our audience, where you're at, what you're doing, and kind of how you got started in Gunner.
Sure. So Addison Edmonds, I'm here in Nashville, Tennessee. I grew up here in Nashville. That's where our warehouse and office is located. How I got into Gunner. I was finishing up college. I got Gunner from North Alabama. He's a British chocolate lab, and realized pretty quickly that he was a pretty special dog, and was able to hunt him almost daily as I was finishing up school. And I started an advertising company so I could stay in Oxford, Mississippi, where I went to school, really so that I could hunt and fish as much as possible. And you know, I knew that advertising gig wasn't going to be my forever gig. As I was hunting and training and using, dog products. That was my first real hunting dog that I bought. I was pretty frustrated with the dog kennels available on the market. So I decided pretty quickly, I need to make the best of the best, the safest, the most utilitarian, with all the features that I needed on my kennel. And I convinced myself that I was going to sell that company, took what I made from the sale of that company and put it all into starting Gunner Kennels. I didn't know what I was going to call the company at the time, but I knew it'd be a good honor to name it something about Gunner, just because he was kind of the reason why I started the company and had the idea for the kennel.
Before we get into the full story of Gunner Kennels and even Gunner and that, I mean, that's a fascinating story. Let's talk about the kennels themselves. Like, what did you, when you started out and you're like, these kennels suck, I'm going to build something that doesn't suck. What were the first few things that you were looking at? What were you like, this is where we're going to build our foundation. This is how we're going to approach creating this awesome dog kennel.
So I never felt like the kennel I was using was safe. It was similar to the $60 pet porter plastic crates that everybody had. I always remember trying to put a strap over the kennel and up underneath the bed rail and tightening it down. If you don't get it tight enough, one of the hooks is going to come off, and there's just no good way to strap it down. And that was like a big pain point that I had. As I started kind of thinking, I was a big outdoorsman, and Yeti coolers had just came out, and I saw how they kind of 10x'd the features for an ice chest. And I got one, and I was just blown away, because I was one of those guys that went through 3 to 4 Coleman coolers a year, that I was like, wow, if I can focus on the features that I need and try to hit them with a big hammer, I think other people are going to want that too. And so, being able to strap it down was a big thing. I had a buddy in college that got his dog stolen from his kennel at the Home Depot. And so I wanted to be able to lock the door. I wanted to be able to clean it out easily. All the kennels, if you try to hose them out, there's always a lip around there, so you couldn't get everything out. So I wanted a drain plug on there. And kind of as we got into the development side of it, it turned out that rotational molded plastic was kind of the best option, similar to a Yeti cooler. And same with a double wall, just kind of 2 layers of impact protection. But I just kind of had a inspiration to make the best. And to me, that meant the safest, the best features, the best looking. I wanted to have our company have the best customer service. I wanted it to be the best place to work. I remember mapping this out, being like, I want everybody to be able to bring their dogs to work. And we've got mid-20, I think probably 25 employees, and there's a lot of dogs running around here every day. And so, I think that we do a good job at customer service, and we try our hardest to make the best dog kennel on the planet. So, we're not perfect, but we're trying our best.
Yeah. And I know, I've not heard anything negative about the Gunner Kennels, and that's one thing. And that kind of leads my next question is you hit on the Yeti, similarities, the roto molded, and a lot of people are like, man, those things are so over engineered. But I wouldn't necessarily take that as a knock on it. I don't see that as is that kind of how you approach it with Gunner is because I'm sure you've heard someone say that, it's so over-engineered that, so thick, so heavy, so things like that. Well, it takes those types of things to provide the protection that you guys say that, you provide. And so is that like a compliment for you?
Yeah, it's hard. Like I remember the first Yeti I got was the same size on the outside as one of the Coleman coolers, but I couldn't fit as much on the inside. And I remember going, I'm kind of giving up what I can fit, but it keeps ice so much longer and it's just so much better for my use case. So it's similar. Like I remember early on somebody said, well, if you could make a kennel that was lighter and cheaper, I'd probably buy one. And I'm like, I get it. I wish I could, but in order to be as strong and have the features, it's got to be heavier and it costs more to make. And so it's kind of a catch-22 almost, but I've never really been one to be concerned about our costs. I just want to focus on how to make the best product. We'll figure out the cost later because I knew, being a 24-year-old with limited to no income, I was going to pay whatever I needed to pay for a kennel like that. The cost, unfortunately, just it is what it is, but it's something that we don't really back away from because I appreciate the quality of well-made products, and that's just what it takes.
Yeah, and I think everyone that's listened to this show knows that I've talked about things like that as far as some of the products that we feature in the magazine and some of the products that I've talked about on a regular basis is waterfowl hunters have proven that they're not afraid to spend money on quality products. And so, that's something that I'm sure that you guys are well aware of. But, one of the things I've kind of looked and heard you guys talk about before is some of the ways that you tested these kennels. And I kind of want you to share some of those stories as you're building this, as you're going through this R&D process. How were you testing these kennels?
Yeah, so I kind of have it in two categories, the redneck Addison test or the independent third-party research test. So right when we first got our first essentially prototypes, I took it out and shot it with my shotgun with dove loads from 5 steps, 10 steps, and 15 steps. I shot it with my bow. I just wanted to see what an arrow would do. It's not necessarily realistic, but it's like, let's just see what this thing can take. And so we documented some of that. And, as we've grown, we realized people might think you're trying to mislead them one way or another, although we weren't, but it's better to just have third-party testing. So we sent it off to a third party to do independent crash tests and independent, I'll call them crush tests, just to see how much weight they can hold in case you're in something like a rollover, total your vehicle. And, they've had really good results. And we're working on some new tests that are going to be pretty interesting. All going to be third party. Like we're kind of done with the old school. Let's just take it over to my buddy's camp and throw it off a cliff. And although we'll still do that just to see, but you're not proving much when you throw like a food crate off of a cliff. Like how realistic is that? And same with a kennel.
No, that's true. But that's one thing that you guys really hang your hat on. And we've worked with you guys on that many times where you get so many stories. I mean, you already mentioned you had a buddy that had his, dog stolen in Oxford but you guys get stories where you actually get the end result story of one of your customers being in an accident. And before we came live here, you mentioned that you had just had a couple new ones come in. You mind sharing a couple of those stories? Because I think every time they go up, they're just fascinating.
One thing that we do is if we hear from a customer that they got in a wreck, we call them, we verify it, we interview, we get pictures, we get as much data as we can to make sure that there really was a wreck. And I think we got 4 in the last week. And I remember I heard something about, we did a save story back to back about a year or two ago. And somebody said, I'm never going to buy a Gunner kennel because all their customers getting wrecks. But, there's something like 90,000 wrecks a day or something like that. And, I think it's essentially been about, we've sold probably close to 35 to 40,000 kennels. And we've got about 30 to 35 save stories that we know about. All the dogs, they said they've been fine. So last week we got a call from a guy that was going just down the road in Georgia on his UTV, and he was going about 60, he said, and a car pulled out in front of him. He had to swerve to miss him, and I think the car swerved. I think they ended up hitting each other. He flipped. He had 3 dogs in 2 Gunner kennels. One of the kennels, I think, flew out, and one of them I think stayed in, but all 3 dogs were fine. I think he might have broke his arm. There was another wreck last week that the lady flipped her car, I believe, and she was in a 4Runner, and those dogs were fine. We had a wreck come in yesterday, the day before, where a guy totaled his truck, and he had his kennel strapped down with our straps. And that's something that we try to preach, but we also, our straps are expensive, but it's what we've crash tested with and what we believe in, because the 1-inch straps that you can buy at Walmart, those will break in a wreck. And I'd say probably 90% of our save stories that we've had, our customers haven't strapped their kennels down. So the kennel is likely to fly out. And fortunately, the dog is still okay and the kennel's okay. But this guy that totaled his truck, the kennel didn't move. He said if he hadn't had it strapped down, the kennel for sure would have been rolling around in the interstate, and it could have been a lot worse. So, it's something that we try to educate our customers about, that it's important to strap your kennel down, but we also can't, you can't make anybody do anything that they don't want to do. It's kind of part of the system that helps kind of provide you with the best chances for a desirable outcome if you're to get in a wreck.
Yeah. And while you mentioned that, and I was going to wait for a little bit later, but you guys offer all kinds of different accessories for your kennels. What were some of the accessories as you're going through this? Is that kind of a learning process? Are you getting, did you get feedback and you're like, oh yeah, let's switch to this strap or do that? But how did that process go? And how did you kind of expand this accessory line?
Yeah. So, originally all we had was the kennel and straps, and the rest kind of came out of necessity, but it was while I was trying to get the company off the ground. I mean, I remember I was doing everything, including customer service and purchasing and inventory and fulfilling. And I mean, I ended up in the hospital with shingles about a year in, trying to do everything myself. But it's kind of funny looking back, because I had about a year and a half from when I sold my company until we launched our kennel company. So I had a lot of time to focus on designing and building and testing the first Gunner kennel. And then these accessories and other sizes I kind of had to do at night when I was done with the day job part of it. And so coming up with our fan and our pads and all that, our all-weather kit, I wasn't able to focus all my time on those products. And so what we're doing this year is we're going in, we're redoing our fan, we're redoing our all-weather kit, we're making some new accessories that are really cool that I just haven't had the time to focus on. So we've got a small R&D team, a new products team, and we've got some engineers throughout the country that are helping us improve our current products and improve our current accessories and coming out with new accessories as well. And then working on some more keystone products for next year.
Yeah. And one that you guys came out with last year that I know I believe we ran it in the holiday wish list in the magazine, November, December of 2020, the food crate. There's a lot of people around the office that saw it when it came in. We were one of the first people to get a look at it, especially around here. Kind of talk about the food crate and where that idea came from.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was, I kind of knew I was so focused on the kennels right when I started, but I knew if we could build a name for ourselves for quality and kind of over the top engineering, that there was just about every other dog product out there, at least the ones that I was using for my hunting dog, were junk. And so I came up with that concept for just an over the top food crate after I was tired of carrying my other dog food container to and from the truck, and water would get in, and there's just so many things I didn't like about it. So I actually had most of the food crate designed about 3 years ago, and it just took time and money and resources to get it to a point where we're finally ready to launch. We hired a CEO last February, and so now I've been able to shift my role into mostly just product development. And similar to when we came out with the kennel, and we had this wire door on there that we designed, and then we ran a crash test and the door wouldn't hold, and I had to kind of redesign everything. And I thought, okay, what if we put a door frame in it? What if we had its own system where it's a door frame and the door is attached to the hinge and like it's its own system where that helped us pass the crash test. We got the first food crate and the lid was not 100% airtight and watertight. So we had to overhaul it, like all hands on deck in a very short amount of time so we could launch within the period that we were trying to launch in. And it's been pretty well received. We were sold out just every time we got a new shipment in. We're sold out already, and now we're kind of getting control of our inventory and working on some other versions of that food crate. But it was a fun project for me because it's our first kind of keystone product outside of dog kennels, and so that's what we're trying to do now is focus on dog products outside of just kennels, along with more accessories and things for your kennel, but just trying to build the name of quality and customer service, so we can kind of branch out further into the dog products world, which is still going to be kind of specifically for that hunting dog owner. That's just who I am, and that's who I wanted to develop products for. A lot of them will have kind of secondary applications for people outside of the hunting dog world. We've got a big military and police customer base, and then just an invested family dog owner that just cares for the safety and well-being of their dog that will appreciate these products.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I do have to ask you a question though, and this is for all of our listeners out there who have aspirations of starting a company in the hunting outdoor industry. You mentioned you like to hunt a lot. You were hunting a lot early on. How much did you get to hunt? Basically, the question is, do you still get to hunt as much as you want now that you own Gunner Kennels?
When I had the idea, I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to be able to hunt just all the time. Just call it work. It's going to be great. But I think, having a lot of kids in a short amount of time along the same time when we launched the company, and then just the company getting it off the ground is taking a lot more time than planned. But, I'm still pretty lucky in the fact that I can call most of my hunts work. So we're always getting content, or at least we're testing products, or we're meeting with different people in the industry. And so you don't get to hunt as much as you think, but you're still able to hunt. I remember, last season, we went up to Kansas to hunt with some friends, and that was the first kind of fun personal hunt that I went on. And the next day I got home and went up to Kentucky for the last day of the season, and came home, and we had an 8-man limit, and that was actually Gunner's last duck hunt. But I sent a picture to that group of guys that we went to Kansas with, and one of them said, I don't understand how Emily is allowing you to go from, and I'd been hunting for like the last 3 weeks, on this last run with Gunner. He said, I don't understand how you're able to get away with that. And I said, well, we were getting content. We had a photographer out there, and he said, yeah, you're still working on your sales pitch. You don't have to trick me, but I am pretty lucky that can call it work. And so it's a great industry to be in if that's where your passion is. And you don't get to do it as much as you'd like, but you still get to do it a fair amount.
That's why I always ask, I always ask people, or people ask me too, like, oh, you get to hunt for the magazine and things like that. And I do, but I hunted a lot more before I worked for Ducks Unlimited. I'll tell you that. I spend a lot more time in the office now than, but that's what needs to be done, I guess, to be able to slip away and get a couple good hunts in. You mentioned Gunner's last hunt, and this is something that was very, you were very public about it. You were very open about it, when you lost Gunner. But kind of walk us through that whole process from when you got Gunner. I mean, I know this is a very personal story, and this is definitely something that our audience has surely or potentially heard before. But I think it's a good idea to kind of walk through that. Everybody who's a dog owner understands the story. It is a heartfelt story, but just kind of walk us through that whole process from, when you got him to then name the company, and then, as the process went on, up to that last hunt.
I took Gunner the day after I picked him up to a little dove hunt and threw a little dove out there, and I was just going to see if he'd go get it. And he went and got it and brought it right back to me. And we got a pretty cool picture of that. And I just knew he was a special dog from early on. And he wasn't perfect, but no dog is, and nobody is. I think we made a good team. I'm not perfect either, and by any stretch, but I've been so focused on him and his health, and I think even like 4 years ago we did a photo shoot, an article in Wildfowl. It was called Gunner's Last Hunt. I mean, every year I thought it was going to be his last season. I didn't know if he'd, get hit by a car or whatever, and I'd do the best I could to keep an eye on him. But this year, he was doing really good health-wise and really good shape, and he all of a sudden his he just went paralyzed. His arms and legs didn't work. And I literally called up a friend that is the head vet tech at Mississippi State. She's the one that handles the bulldog there. And I remember meeting her a couple of years ago. She said, if you ever need anything, let me know. And she actually had COVID at the time. I didn't know it. I texted her and I said, I don't know what to do. And she said, well, we've got a 24/7 facility and we've got one of the best neurological programs for dogs in the country. If I was you, I'd get in the truck and go. So, I mean, I drove through the middle of the night. I think I got there at like 3 a.m. And the next day, his nose started bleeding. And they said, look, they're about to get an MRI. They said it's either a disc in his neck or he's got some type of brain cancer. And because of COVID, I couldn't go in there and see him. So they said, we're going to bring him out and let you see him for about 30 minutes before the MRI. And so, I mean, I just cried like a baby sitting out there in the middle of the sun and, thinking this is probably my last time to be with him. And I was so exhausted from getting about 30 minutes of sleep and driving through the night. I was just in a haze. And they ended up calling me afterwards saying, it's a disc in his neck. We're going to do surgery this afternoon. And he's probably not ever going to be able to walk again, but he won't be able to run again. But, at least it's not cancer. So went through that emotional roller coaster. And then I had him in physical therapy every day or every other day from like August through September. And he was getting laser therapy, acupuncture, underwater treadmill. I mean, the whole works. And he was doing really well. And I figured if he could walk, he'll still want to hunt. So I took him on some little easy dove hunts, knowing this could be his last. And so I brought my whole family because my kids hadn't hunted with him. And it was a pretty emotional time. And while he was in rehab, they found a lump on his shoulder, which I voiced my concern about a couple of times because it looked like it was growing a little bit. But the vets didn't think it was anything big. But took him in, and they said, "Man, this isn't good. It's probably cancer, and if it's the kind of cancer that we think it is, he might not have long." So that was a big blow. After I kind of thought we were on this road to recovery, and they said he wouldn't have till Christmas. He probably wouldn't make it till Christmas, and this was in September. And so I did everything I could to take him on as many hunts as I could, even like a pheasant shoot, and I mean dove hunts. And I kept one bird from every hunt that I'm getting mounted right now. And it got so bad. I mean, he was doing pretty poorly right around Christmas that I thought we were going to have to, put him down or something. It was just, it wasn't looking good. And all of a sudden, we got an opportunity to hunt for a few days, and he started acting better, and I started taking him hunting, and he started acting better. And I was trying some kind of new age cancer medicine that was supposed to work in dogs. And I thought that it was working because the tumor got so big on his shoulder, but he also had it in his lungs that they removed it. And like a week later, it was double that size. Then I started him on that medicine, and it shrunk down, and he started acting better. I mean, and I think we hunted in 7 different states, and every single hunt, it was just a great day to be alive for me. Like I was pumped to be able to take him on one more hunt, and he wasn't hurting. He wasn't acting like anything was unusual. And I kind of kept a little journal of it at the time because I didn't really know how long I had with him. And then it's funny. You said we're public about it, and we were, but that was never the intention. Like I literally, he made it. So he made it all the way to the last day of duck season. And then the week before my oldest child's 6-year-old birthday, which was March 6th, she was born March 3rd. We were having a big crawfish boil on March 6th. That Tuesday, he kind of fell out in the middle of a meeting, and I just grabbed him and took him to the emergency room, and they said his lungs were full of blood, and they drained it and did what they could, and he was acting okay. And then he just, that Friday before the crawfish boil, he just wasn't acting great. And we had friends from all over that I hadn't seen in a couple of years. It was kind of the first party that everybody was able to come to after or during COVID. And so we had a great day, and Gunnar was having fun and getting to walk around and seeing all these old college buddies that we haven't seen in years. And I could tell by that night, he wasn't doing very good. And I was keeping my vet informed. And the next day it was just pretty, he went downhill really quickly, and it was, probably the hardest day of my life. And And, I always knew that time would come. I never knew how hard it would hit me. I mean, I was full on depressed for like 2 weeks. I mean, I couldn't focus or anything. But so what I was planning on doing was I written a couple letters, and I was planning on just doing a post, which I don't control our Instagram. They don't give me the password, probably for good reason. But I put a couple of them together, and I just sent it to one of our marketing guys. I was like, hey, this is kind of generally what I want to say. And he sent it to my wife, Emily, and they both looked at it and they're like, we can't not share this. Like, this is what you're going through. This is real. Like, we have to share this. And so I was like, I don't really want everybody to know what I'm going through, but I also can appreciate, it's probably helpful to share what you're going through. And so ended up being public, and that was never the intention. But, we had an unbelievable amount of people reach out. I still get letters to this day. I mean, somebody donated to Ducks Unlimited in his name, and a bunch of other foundations, and just, it was amazing to see the outreach from everybody and the support that they had. And so, I'm honored that the people that were able to meet him, and just people that were able to hear his story. I'm honored to be a part of that. And looking forward now, my goal, I was concerned if after, and this was years ago, I remember wondering if after he passed, if I was going to be as passionate about, being in this business. And now I'm kind of refocused and want to get his name out there as much as possible, just to kind of my homage to him of what a special dog he was. So, I've kind of got a new fire under me to get his name out there and get our products out there, kind of in honor of him.
Dog owners have all gone through this, and that's the most unfortunate part about having a dog, especially a hunting dog companion, that, getting into it, that dog is not going to live as long as you. And so you almost, like you said, you're prepared, just not prepared in necessarily the manner, the fashion, the day, the date, I've done it twice, and it's difficult every time, and I've got an 11-year-old now that's, she's, getting up there and now to the point where she's not hunting. She's got injured back leg. She's, hobbling around, and it's not something that, let's just say it's not the bright side of owning a dog, other than the fact that you finally realize the connection that you have with that animal is so awesome. And so that's cool that you're, focused on getting his name out there. I think that's a great homage, and that's cool. And that's something that I think our listeners will really appreciate. And it's it's a difficult subject to talk about. I mean, I'm sitting here struggling with it as you're telling the story, because I'm thinking about my dogs, and I think that's how it relates to people, and it relates to everyone. The interesting part about this, it does not just relate to waterfowl hunting dogs. It can relate to everyone.
Didn't mean to go there. I mean, didn't mean to get sad, but I mean, that's part of it. And it's, our mission is to give dogs the lives they deserve. So every product that we're making is like, we want to be focused on your relationship with your dog and how to make that better and the most enjoyable. Like, really, I mean, dogs are so special that I think people are just now coming around to realizing, how much of an impact they can have on someone's life. So, it's really taken me, I mean, it's been 3 months, and it's kind of taken me up until about now to kind of get focused again and get focused back on work. And yeah.
I struggled with getting another dog. I don't know. How are you doing with that? That's, I'm just curious.
We had another dog that was Emily, my wife's dog. She bought when we were dating, named Goose, and she passed away about 4 years ago. And it's taken her up until now to be ready to get another dog. She just kind of didn't think anything could top that and didn't want to even try. And our CEO's got a really special older female yellow lab that she's really warmed up to and kind of remembered what it's like to have a special dog around her. And so she just went and got a standard poodle named Teal, and she actually looks a lot like Goose, our other dog that passed away. And so that's, we're back in that puppy phase, and I didn't know, what I was going to do. And I think we're working on a plan now to get another lab this fall, but, it'll be interesting. I don't know if I'm going to be a touch disconnected or a touch less attached, because I know how painful it is at the end, but more than likely you're going to go right back into it, and it's going to, it's like your kids. So, I mean, it's a tough thing that, it took me some time and because like half meat, I don't think I can ever top what we had, so why try? But I think it's just important that dogs can bring so much to your life that, I think the best thing to do is get another puppy and start that over again. And the good thing too is when I'm back in that training and puppy mode, and then as they become, a little bit older, I'm back into product mode and thinking, how can I make the best products for this dog? So I'm looking forward to that.
I just remember when I got my first hunting dog as a black lab named Cole. And we always joke around that, as Cole got older, I got him was like 16, so I was still living at home. And like my parents would be like, my mom would be like, oh, we'd look back and we'd think about it. And my mom's just like, oh, Cole was the best dog ever, And I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, you don't even remember when he was like 8 months old and stood on his hind legs and chewed the drywall off one of the bedroom walls. It's like, you don't remember those things. And I think that getting another dog for me was like a reconnection to some of the things that, my older labs quit doing. And now it's like, oh, kind of getting back into that process. So it is all a process. And one thing for sure I can say, just from my experience, it is definitely a personal, step by step. So, good luck with that process for sure. And I don't want to keep bringing up that. And so, I'll go ahead and roll on in this conversation. And I wanted to talk to you about, Gunner is going to be at the DU Expo coming up at the end of this month. You're going to be there. You're going to be there talking about your story, Gunner's story. I believe you're giving a presentation in the dog village. But I also wanted to talk about you had a project this fall that was kind of in partnership with Ducks Unlimited and Can-Am, and kind of explain this ultimate waterfowling rig giveaway that you got involved in, and how that process kind of has blossomed into what will be the end game of the whole process here in a couple of weeks.
This would have been right before COVID, I think. Our PR firm reached out and said, we've got this idea, they work with Can-Am. They said, we want to get you a Can-Am. You're going to build it out to be the ultimate waterfowl rig. You can put whatever you want on it and, use it and get content. And I think at the end it'd be donated to Ducks Unlimited and have them do a raffle for conservation. And it all sounded great. I was like, what's the catch? This sounds too good to be true. And then, COVID hit, and all of a sudden it was impossible to get any accessories in time. And then found out about Gunner and his cancer. And so I didn't even know if I was going to be duck hunting at all. But I mean, everything kind of happened just at the right time, not a minute too late, where we got it built out and was able to take it, on this kind of the second half of the season. Took it all over the country, really, at least my kind of area that I go around, and we're able to put it through a lot of use and abuse, and I think it turned out pretty well. It's a pretty cool looking, unique machine. It's got the mossy oak bottomland with the Ducks Unlimited logo in there, and they wrapped the whole vehicle, and it's been a lot of fun. It was. I did an interview the other day, and they were like, "Are you going to regret not having it?" I'm like, "Well, I kind of went into it knowing I wasn't going to have it, so I never really got too attached, but I am a little bit attached because that was what we used for Gunner's last season, and so it's been a great vehicle. I took my kids out on it yesterday afternoon for a little stroll, and it's just been a really fun project that I think we're going to be able to raise some money for conservation, and hopefully somebody will walk away with a pretty sweet rig. And I don't think we've made this known yet, but since that was Gunner's last season, I've got a little plaque being made with a picture of him saying, like, I'm just going to say something like Gunner was here and the dates or something like that, but kind of Gunner's last season, I'm going to put it in kind of a conspicuous spot on the bike. But
sounds like you might be buying a majority of those raffle tickets.
Yeah, I think that.
You thought about that, haven't you?
I thought,
yeah. Okay, I'll just check it.
I think there's some rules against that.
Hey, whatever. It's all raising money for conservation. So, wherever that money comes from, if you want to buy them, go right ahead. But it is a Can-Am Defender side by side. Just to clarify on that, and you can check it out on your website on Gunner Kennels. You've got on Gunner.com. You've got some information there. We've got some information on ducks.org for people who want to check that out before the expo, take a look at it. Addison took some pictures of using it, decoys. It's got, looks like it has some pretty serious accessories, the long list of accessories. You can look it up and I'm sure you remember most of them, but with the doors, like you mentioned, the mossy oak doors, half doors completely dipped and DU bottom lands, some improved tires, 32-inch tires on those things. I mean, it's a pretty big LED lights, quack racks on the front, top, and rear. It's pretty sharp. So if people want to take a look at that, they can before the whole deal kicks off. And one more question for you. You said you kind of hunted around a little bit. I always ask, I ask most guests that come on here just to get some feedback. But how was your duck season last year? It sounds like for you, it was a little hectic with Gunner's health, but it sounded like you were able to get out. So, just in the manner of, I ask everyone that question, I might as well find out how yours was.
It was, I guess, the most memorable season. I mean, we were hunting Kansas and we had a phenomenal afternoon with like 8 guys, just limits of mallards, and everybody's kind of sitting around afterwards going, man, this has got to be my top 1 or 2 duck hunts I've ever been on. And they said, Addison, what about you? And I said, shoot, I don't know. I've had so many that Canada last year was a big bucket list hunt, being able to bring Gunner, and I've had some really memorable hunts, but even the hunts that weren't as many ducks that we were able to get, it was still, every hunt was a bonus hunt for me to be with Gunner. And so it was a really special season. Going into the season, I figured I'd be deer hunting a lot more, and just, I wasn't going to go duck hunting if I couldn't bring Gunner. And so I was able to bring him, and we were able to have a lot of success and a lot of fun, and ended it with a all-day hunt with some friends in Kentucky, and did really well. And I think I've got like 14 or 16 birds that were mounting, everything from a dove to a lesser to a widgeon. We shot a widgeon on the last day on Gunner's last hunt. And, it was a really special season, and did much better than I anticipated going into the season.
Yeah, it sounded like you had a pretty good season in comparison to some of the people that I talked to. As far as the expo, what should you set up as our listeners? What's the expectation for when they walk in there and see Gunner products? What do you want people to take away from the expo from Gunner's perspective?
Well, that's a good question. They kind of keep me in the dark on what I'm supposed to be doing for the expo. I think I'm doing a seminar on the Can-Am and kind of walking through the build. I don't know if we're doing something about dog training. We might be. I've kind of been going, they tell me to go to Missouri tomorrow. That's where I'm going. And then the next week. So I don't really know the full agenda, but we'll be there just to meet people and show our products and show the Can-Am off and just have a good time.
Awesome. Hey, before I get you out of here, I just want to know, what's next for Gunner Kennels? Where are you guys looking? And, as far as even sneak peek, maybe some new products, or, what should people be expecting from you guys? We've
got a lot of exciting new products coming out. This year is like I was saying, kind of revamping some of our accessories, coming out with some new accessories. Next year is going to be really exciting. We've got some new Keystone products. I think if you really sat down and thought about what dog products you're frustrated with in the hunting world, you could gather what we're working on, and we're still kind of streamlining our new product development process, and so we're trying to get better at that and launch products better. But
yeah,
the next year, 2 or 3 years, we've got a lot of exciting products coming out, and meet our demands of our customers and meet some new people and friends along the way.
Addison, man, I really appreciate you joining us on the podcast today. This has been great conversation about the company, about Gunner, and about new products that you guys are really excited about. So I really appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me.
I'd like to thank my guest, Addison Edmonds, the founder of Gunner Kennels, for joining us today and talking about some of the products and some of his personal stories with his own dog, Gunner. I'd like to thank our producer, Clay Baird, for putting the show together and getting it out to you. And I'd like to thank you, the listener, for joining us on the DU podcast and supporting wetlands conservation.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the DU Podcast. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit www.ducks.org/DU Podcast for resources based on today's topics, as well as access to more episodes. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of Ducks Unlimited. Until next time, stay tuned to the ducks.